Hey guys, so the car market, new cars, used cars, what's going on? I mean, here we are saying goodbye to 2023 and we're saying hello to 2024. So what happened during the year? Did prices go up? Did they go down? Has supply of cars returned to normal levels? And by that, I mean, has it returned to pre-pandemic levels? Because that's where the big change happened. And what, of course, is likely to happen in 2024? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go through all of that right after this.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
So let's start with the used car market. As you probably know, used car prices went crazy after the pandemic. There was a shortage of supply and a rocket in demand. Sellers could pretty much charge what they wanted. That was the nature of the market. Well, 2023 brought a bit of a dip in prices. In fact, it was the largest dip seen in over 3 years. So it brought some normality, some sanity back to the market. And at the December midpoint, the average used car price was down to £17,034. That's a year-on-year decrease of 3.9%. Now, you may think that that is reasonable, but actually think of pre-pandemic, and the average price of a car was less than £13,000 at the time. So prices have softened, however. But why have they softened? Well, there's a combination of things. The supply of used cars has steadied as new car production has returned to normal levels. Then there's the fluctuating fuel prices because of the wars that have been happening. And I'll include electricity in that, as well as petrol and diesel, because, of course, electric prices also went up quite dramatically. And then there was the cost of living, plus the rising interest rates. And even if we're not talking interest rates affecting car loans as much, but for a lot of people, their mortgages went up. And of course, then that dampens the intention of buying any other thing. I mean, a car is the second biggest purchase after a house. It requires a big commitment. So, and also, of course, it's just down to the market readjusting after some unprecedented times. Nonetheless, the UK did see a 5.5% growth in the third quarter. Now, that's nearly 2 million used cars changing hands. Overall, for the year, it's been a 4.6% growth. But that's still less than pre-pandemic, which was a 9.3% average year-on-year growth. By the way, used EVs are taking a real hit on depreciation, which makes them a great bargain, actually makes them quite attractive to consider as used options. So they're well worth thinking about if you're tentatively starting to look at whether you should go electric, but you don't want to pay the high prices of buying a brand new EV. In fact, sales of used EVs were up 100%, taking 1.8% of the market share. So what about new cars? Well, car production was up in 2023. That's globally and also right here in the UK. And that's mostly down to the fact that strained supply started to return to normal. Well, chiefly we're talking about obviously semiconductors and computer chips. You know, that was the big issue that we had with new car production. But we're also talking about other components as well. For example, like steel and aluminium. I mean, who knew that the war in Ukraine and of course the boycott of Russia would cause severe pressure on supplies of that sort of stuff? Now, pent-up demand for cars still remains strong, so sales did go up and prices stayed pretty lofty throughout 2023, simply because dealers could still charge what they wanted. But the volume is still down a little bit based on compared to pre-pandemic levels, although it has grown. And part of the growth is down to the surge in electric vehicles. Now, they are in fact now the second largest volume of cars being produced compared to petrol cars. Diesels are distant history now. So whether you're a fan or not, whether you like them or not, 2023 saw record interest and sales growth in EVs. In fact, the Tesla Model Y became the best-selling car globally. EVs may not be right for everyone, but they are here to stay. Now, UK production of electric plug-in hybrid and hybrid vehicles and of course electric vehicles, all of that was up 20% to 35,169 in November. That represented a 38.3% of the total manufacturing output. Since January, UK factories have churned out 322,577 of these type of electrified vehicles. That's up 53.7% on the same period compared to 2022. Now, to be fair, a large part of the sales growth has been due to fleet sales. And with incentives to buy electric cars, such as subsidies and tax breaks, all of these things are starting to diminish. Private sales, to be honest, are struggling to the point that in big markets such as America, some of the massive car companies there have been dialing back on their EV investment. That's a topic for another time. In fact, I have covered that in an EV update video, which you can find on this channel, where I explain a bit more about what's happening. But I'll just add that EV sales in November 2023 were down 29% compared to, say, 2019, when EV sales, weren't even that high. And the EV sales in November this year accounted for just 1 in 10 of all retail sales. Concerns over EV ownership, such as range and charging, higher purchase prices, though they are much cheaper used, and of course the rising insurance, all of these things are putting pressure on consumers that are even thinking about making that switch to electric vehicles. But that's probably going to change over time. So to summarize 2023, new car prices finally started contracting, though they're still high. Car production has ramped up, so that's a good thing, though there's an emphasis on more EVs being produced. And the used market is starting to stabilize a little, although the shortfall in new cars from the pandemic years still means that there will be a gap in the much sought after 3 to 5 year old car segment. So the cars aged 3 to 5 years. And this will continue for the next couple of years. Basically, this is because 3 million cars were lost, if you like, during the pandemic, because new cars weren't sold between 2020 and 2022 in the numbers that we needed. So what about 2024 then? How are things looking? Well, robust used car demand is expected to continue into 2024, with transactions estimated to increase to 7.24 million sales compared to the 7.17 that are forecast for 2023. As more new cars hit the market and demand evens out, this should hopefully continue to put downward pressure on used prices. Though EVs, higher end nearly new cars, those are the segments where you'll find the best bargains. So those will depreciate the hardest and quickest, and you'll find the best bargains, though they may not be the cars that you want. Also, non-ULEZ compliant cars, they are really hitting rock bottom. While prices did start to recover a little bit, they're still going to be a little bit lower in anticipation that stricter emission zones, like London's ULEZ, are probably going to be introduced in other parts of the country if, as is widely expected, Labour is going to take over government, which, elections could happen as soon as summer this year, but they're definitely happening within this year. By the end of the year, there will be elections, and Labour is predicted to take over. The possibility of more anti-car and anti-motorist policies coming with that government, with a Labour government, is certain to put pressure on the older cars, because people that can't afford newer cars will buy older cars, but with all these added pressures, it's probably going to put them off, and that will further put pressure on older cars, and prices are expected to come down. As for the new car market, expect a return to the days of bargaining and special offers and enticing finance deals and overall discounting in the market. That's after years of dealers being able to name their price because supply was so limited. Expect to see a growth of about 4%. And to see sales rising from 1.89 million overall cars sold in 2023, or as estimated to be, to 1.97 predicted for 2024. More and more manufacturers are offering electric cars in their ranges, and some are choosing to entirely move over to electric. So for example, Nissan recently announced that every new car it launches from henceforth will only be an EV. And of course, there's new players coming into the market, people like BYD, GWM Aura, both of those from China, and Fisker from America, that only offer EVs, like Tesla, for example. So that's all they'll have in the range. And the keen sales push that will be happening will particularly be the case for electric cars, as I reckon that the supply of electric cars will greatly exceed the demand for them, as manufacturers are moved, or well, they're basically forced to produce more and more battery-powered cars. However, buyers are still sort of, shall we say, lukewarm, or shall we say cautious about making the switch to electric. And why are manufacturers being switched or forced to switch to electric? Well, because we know that the 2030 cutoff deadline for the sales of brand new petrol and diesel cars was put off by Rishi Sunak to 2035, thankfully, bringing us in line with the rest of Europe. However, the actual targets of reducing the number of petrol and diesel cars on sale were not rescinded. So what I mean is that although that deadline was changed, but the targets that were set in place for manufacturers still remain. It's called the ZEV mandate. And for example, next year it requires that 22% of all brand sales must be zero-emission vehicles, or that manufacturer will face a £15,000 fine for every non-compliant vehicle sold. And they have to hit 80% by 2030 and 100% by 2035. However, the current average share of EV sales across brands is 16%, is about 16%. And for some manufacturers, as low as only 3%. Let me know if you want me to make a video that actually explains the ZEV mandate in more detail, what it is, how it works, and what it will mean for the availability of cars in the future. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do that. Anyway, it could certainly mean that some manufacturers will possibly disappear altogether from our market. And also that for those people that were taking comfort in the fact that, well, we'll still be able to buy a petrol car in the year 2034. So say if you're thinking, oh, you know what, I'm just going to buy a Mercedes E-Class in 2034 and that'll be good for me for another 20 years or so. Well, the thing is, yes, but good luck actually trying to get a brand new electric or petrol car, at that time. Because the fact is that if you want to buy a petrol car that will last you into the distance beyond 2035, you should actually do that now, because there's still choice and they're still out there. And even then, I can't account for what legislation might restrict the usage of that car in the future, such as things like ULEZ. But in terms of cars being available, I think you'll find that there will be very few cars available in 2034 that are petrol. On the other hand, petrol and diesel vehicles have to be around for a while. So you will continue to see petrol stations. Some people are concerned about, are we going to see them disappearing? You may start to see less of them, but you still will see them because ultimately we have 40 million vehicles on our roads in the UK. And only about 1 million of them are actually currently electric. Now, with the best possible annual sales of, say, 2 million vehicles a year, we're still talking about, pretty much around 20 years to replace all those vehicles. So I reckon, that will take us into 2045. So expect fossil fuel cars to still be around and in use by the year 2050. Although by that time, we will have fully autonomous vehicles, and quite possibly the whole concept of car ownership might have completely changed by then. So it's hard to really predict that far ahead. Anyway, that's the far future, and what I was supposed to talk about in this video was 2024. So in short, what I would say is that things are looking good for 2024 for the car buyer, as prices will start to normalize for used cars, and deals and offers will return for new cars. There will be more choice of amazing new cars. They will be packed with incredible and new technology. In fact, I fully expect to see generative AI integrated into cars, into some cars, by the end of 2024. Not maybe to drive it, so we won't see fully autonomous cars by the end of the year, but certainly to act as a kind of roving assistant in your car, or even a companion. Meanwhile, there is still time to buy some classic style old school cars, some still with manual transmissions. They're still available in the market. There's still cars that you can buy that are engaging and fun and enticing to drive. But you know what? Make the most of it. Get them now while you still can. So there you go. There's a roundup of what's happening, or what happened in 2023 and what is likely to happen in 2024. Of course, the future is unpredictable, as we've seen from the last few years, but let's stay optimistic, let's stay positive, and I wish you all a fantastic 2024.
Brown car guy.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here, or right here on YouTube. Just hit these 3 little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.